The restraint cord they used was tighter than it needed to be. I knew this because I had been in tighter. I sat in the chair they strapped me to and breathed through my nose and counted the ceiling panels the way a man counts anything when he needs his brain to stay somewhere useful. 14 panels, 3 with stress fractures. The room was designed to feel small. Rooms like this always were. The one who walked in first was tall. They were all tall, the Velhari. Phosphorescent, like something that lived at the bottom of the ocean and learned to walk upright and develop a deep love of paperwork. The markings on its neck shifted color when it moved, blue to green to something I did not have a name for. It carried a data slate pressed against its chest the way a junior clerk carries anything important, like it might disappear if held loosely. It looked at me. I looked at it. It looked back at the slate. The scanner they ran on the first pass made a sound like a question and then went quiet. The Velhari with the slate tilted its head, ran it again. The scanner made the same sound. Then it made a different sound, lower, and the screen on the device went the particular shade of blank that screens go when they have decided they would rather not be involved. The clerk, I was already thinking of it as the clerk, because that is what it was, tapped the device twice. Then harder. Then with the specific frustration of a being that has never once been told that its equipment might simply be wrong. A second Velhari appeared in the doorway, conferred quietly. Both of them looked at me like I was a math problem that should not exist. I waited. Waiting is something I am very good at. I have waited in places that made this chair feel like a porch swing in June. The clerk tried a third scanner. This one did not go blank. It came back with a readout, and whatever was on that readout made the clerk's neck markings cycle through 4 colors in about 2 seconds. It turned the slate so its colleague could see. The colleague's markings did the same thing. I almost asked what it said, but I have found over the years that the less you say in rooms like this one, the more you hear. They brought in a third Velhari eventually. This one was older. The markings on its neck were denser, layered the way rank accumulates, slowly over time, through things you would rather not have done. It took the slate, read it, looked at me with the expression of someone who has just found a bird that should not exist sitting calmly in their kitchen. Designation, it said. The translator chip in my left ear rendered the word flat and clean. Attaché, I said. That is a diplomatic function. Yes. You were captured in a forward position zone. I was. Explain. I went where I was needed. I paused. That dog won't hunt as an interrogation strategy, by the way. I'm not going to fill in what you leave blank. You'll have to ask the actual questions. All 3 of them looked at me. The older one's neck went a color I had started privately calling red, though it was not quite red. More the color of something about to make a decision. Species, it said. Human. More slate tapping, more colors cycling. There is no entry, the clerk said to the older one, not to me, as if I might not notice. I heard that, I said. The clerk looked at me, looked at the older one, looked back at the slate like it might have changed. It had not changed. They ran me through intake the way you process anything that does not fit the form by finding the closest available box and pressing until something gives. Unit, complicated, prior postings, several, augmentations. I looked at my hands. The question assumed augmentations were something added from outside. I did not correct the assumption. I said none listed. The form they eventually produced classified me as a Class 3 support auxiliary. Lowest combat designation in their entire tier structure. The kind of category reserved for beings who carry equipment, prepare food, and operate communication relays. The kind of category that means, in practical terms, that no one keeps a close eye on you because there is no reason to. I kept my face doing nothing. The clerk attached a tag to my wrist. It was the same burnt orange color as the tags on the medics in the intake holding area I had passed through. I looked at it, looked at the door, looked at my hands again. Will that be all? I said. The older Velhari studied me for a long moment. Its neck markings had gone still. That, I was learning, was its own kind of signal. For now, it said. They walked me to the auxiliary holding block with two guards who held their weapons the way people hold weapons when they do not expect to use them. The block was large. Long rows of cells with common areas between them, lit by the same flat blue-white light that Velhari apparently put everywhere, as if they had agreed as a civilization that shadows were unnecessary. It smelled like recycled air and something faintly mineral, like wet stone. There were others inside already. Not human. Not anything I had a file on, which is saying something because I have a very large internal file. The ones nearest the entrance were Keth. I knew Keth from briefings. 8 feet of dense muscle and scar tissue, with joints that bent in more directions than felt sporting. They moved in a group, and they watched everything that entered the block with the same expression, assessing, categorizing, filing. There were smaller ones near the far wall, 3 of them. Gray-toned, very still, with large dark eyes and the specific quality of stillness that belongs to things that are always calculating. Thren. I had less of a file on Thren. What I had said, mathematically obsessed, emotionally illegible, not physically threatening, extremely observant. The briefing had used the phrase compulsive documentation, and I had noted it without thinking much about it at the time. I thought about it now. One of the Thren had already produced a small stylus and a flat recording surface and was writing something. It had been writing since I walked through the door. It had not looked away from me once. I found an empty spot along the wall and sat down and put my back against it and looked at the room the way I look at every room. Exits, 3, all monitored. Structural material, reinforced composite, stress points at the junctures near the ventilation housing. Ceiling height enough to matter, not enough to be useful on its own. The guards did their business and left. The room settled back into whatever it had been before I arrived. One of the Thren, the one with the stylus, slid sideways along the wall in my direction. It moved the way water finds a course, without announcing itself. It stopped about 4 feet away and looked at me with those large dark eyes and said, in very precise translated syllables, "You are classified auxiliary." "I am," I said. "Interesting," the stylus moved. "What is your actual function?" I looked at the ceiling for a moment. "That depends on the Tuesday," I said. The stylus kept moving. The Thren showed nothing on its face. Whether that was because it felt nothing or because its face simply did not do what faces are supposed to do, I could not yet tell. "My name is Osel," it said. "Marcus," I said. "Marcus," it wrote that down too. "You arrived without fear indicators." "I arrived tired," I said. "There's a difference." Osel considered this. Then it wrote something else. Then it slid back along the wall to where the other 2 Thren were sitting and began showing them what it had written. All 3 of them looked at me. All 3 of them began writing. I closed my eyes. The restraint tag on my wrist was a ½ centimeter too loose on the inner edge. The locking mechanism was Velhari standard, which meant it was very good at what it was designed for and completely unprepared for anything outside its design parameters. I had cataloged this within the first 40 seconds of wearing it. I left it on. There was no reason to do anything else yet. The block had its rhythms, the way all enclosed spaces develop rhythms. Meals came at intervals. Guards rotated. The Keth moved in a loose hierarchy that expressed itself through proximity and posture, the way all hierarchies do when there are no titles left to use. The one at the top was larger than the others, not by much, but by enough. It moved like something that had never needed to consider whether it was the most dangerous thing in a given space. It noticed me on the second day. I was eating. The food was not good, but it was regular and it was calories, and I have eaten worse things in worse places with worse company and been grateful for all of it. The large Keth came and stood over me. This is a very old move. It is old because it usually works. size, shadow, the physical grammar of dominance. It lands the same way across most species because most species developed under the same basic pressure. Things bigger than you can end you, so you learn to read size. I set down my tray. I looked up at it. I did not say anything. It said something in its own language that the translator chip rendered as a rough approximation of "you are in the wrong place, small thing." I thought about that for a second. Probably, I said. What happened next was brief. This is the part people always get wrong when they picture it later. They imagine it as dramatic, as extended, as the kind of thing with build-up and sound. It was not any of those things. It was geometry and timing and the specific knowledge of where a joint will go if you encourage it in the wrong direction. The Keth was on the floor before it had finished deciding how it wanted this to go. I sat back down. I picked up my tray. The room was very quiet. Ossel was at my elbow within 40 seconds, stylus already moving. That, it said, was not auxiliary behavior. No, I said, I suppose not. The stylus scratched again. Ossel tilted its head at a precise angle, the way something calculates. What are you, Marcus? It said. I finished what was on my tray. Tired, I said, mostly. Ossel wrote that down too, underlined it from what I could see. The Keth got up eventually. It moved away to the far end of the block and did not come near me again. The others watched this happen and drew their own conclusions. That is always how it works in enclosed spaces. You do not have to say a word. The room does the talking. By the time lights dimmed that night, the Thren had filled the first notebook. I watched Ossel start a second one and thought, not for the first time, that the most dangerous thing in any room is rarely the one making the most noise. I put my head back against the wall. 14 ceiling panels, 3 with stress fractures. Well, shoot, I said to no one in particular. No one answered, but Ossel's stylus, faintly in the near dark, kept moving. The third day was when I started to understand the shape of things. Ossel found me in the common area during the late meal interval, the time when the guards were fewest and the prisoners were most themselves. It sat across from me with its recording surface and its stylus and its unsettling habit of documenting everything before deciding whether to speak. I have a question, it said. You have several hundred, I said. You've been writing them down for 3 days. Ossel paused. The dark eyes moved to its notes and back. Yes, it said, but this one is different. I waited. Are all humans like you? I looked at the table between us, at the wall past it, at the particular quality of the blue-white light that never changed and never dimmed all the way. No, I said. Ossel wrote that down. Are any humans like you? I thought about the men and women I had known, the ones who were still breathing and the ones who were not, the ones who had made the same choices I made, and the ones who had made different ones, and the ones who had not been given the chance to choose. Some, I said. Ossel wrote that down too. Then it capped its stylus, which I had not seen it do before, and it looked at me with those large, dark eyes and said, The Velhari think you are a mistake, an error in their capture net. I know, I said. They think you are not worth examining. I know that too. Ossel uncapped the stylus. They are wrong, it said, and went back to writing. I leaned back against the wall and watched the Keth at the far end of the room, and thought about the tag on my wrist, and the stress fractures in the ceiling panels, and the rotation schedule of the guards. Not yet, I thought. Not yet. Ossel showed me the intake file on the 4th day. It had obtained it through methods it did not explain and I did not ask about, because some questions are less useful than the answers they would produce. The Velhari had listed my species as unknown, primate subtype, non-combat. I read it twice, slow. A muscle moved in my jaw. I handed the slate back to Ossel. Bless their hearts, I said. Osel's stylus was moving, before the words finished leaving my mouth. That phrase, it said, in your language it is compassionate, but your tone is not compassionate. No, I said. It is the opposite. Yes. Osel wrote for a long time. Fascinating, it said. I looked at the file one more time before Osel put it away. Non-combat. The word sat in my head with all the weight of everything it did not know, and all the weight of everything I had never told anyone, and the specific weight of years spent in places where being underestimated was the only armor that never ran out. I let it sit there. Non-combat. Well, that dog would not hunt either. On the 5th day, the ground moved. Not like an earthquake, more like a held breath that the building finally let go. A deep structural shudder that started somewhere beneath us and traveled up through the floor and into the soles of my feet, and I was already standing before the sound caught up with the feeling. The block went loud immediately. Alarms. The particular acoustics of a space that was built to contain things reacting to something it was not built to contain. Dust fell from the ceiling. 2 of the stress fractures in the panels above me widened. I looked at them. Then I looked at the room. There was a lot to do. I got started. What I am is not a mystery to me. It has never been a mystery to me. There are people who spend their whole lives asking who they are, and I understand that, I do, but I have never had that particular luxury. You find out what you are in specific kinds of rooms, under specific kinds of pressure, when there are no other options left, and the thing that needs doing is looking at you and waiting. You find out fast. What you do with it afterward, that is the harder question, the one that keeps me up some nights, the one I do not answer out loud. But in the moment, when the dust is falling and the alarms are going and everything in the room is deciding between useful and useless, in that moment, I am very clear on what I am. I got started. On the morning of the 6th day, Osel sat beside me in the common area while I was doing nothing in particular, and for a long time it said nothing either. This was new. Osel always had something to write. Its stylus was still. After a while it said, "You have done that before." Not a question. Yeah, I said. I did not say where. I did not say how many times. I did not say anything about the faces I still see when a room goes quiet in a particular way. Osel did not ask. It wrote something very small on the recording surface, capped the stylus, left it capped. We sat there for a while longer, in the flat blue-white light that never changed, in the room that smelled like recycled air and wet stone, while the block settled back into its rhythms around us. It was, strangely, the least alone I had felt in years. I did not say that either. But Osel, I think, wrote it down anyway. The Velhari came for me on the 7th day. 2 guards, no explanation, the kind of summons that does not require one. I stood up, straightened my jacket. They had let me keep the jacket because the intake file said non-combat, and non-combat personnel are not considered worth the administrative effort of stripping, and I looked at Osel. Osel looked back at me, then it looked at the guards, then it uncapped its stylus and began writing very fast. I followed the guards out. Behind me, the stylus kept scratching. Some things you carry into a room and never bring back out. I know this. I have always known this. The trick is deciding before the door closes which ones are worth keeping. I decided. I walked through the door. The interrogation room was smaller than the processing room. They always are. Smaller is deliberate. Smaller makes the walls closer, makes the air feel thinner, makes the chair you are sitting in feel like the only fixed point in the world. Rooms like this are built to make you feel like the only reasonable thing to do is talk. I have been in rooms like this before. Different walls, different ceiling, different species on the other side of the table. Same room. The Velhari across from me was not the clerk from intake. This one was senior in the way that seniority shows when it has been earned badly, careful, controlled, with the specific stillness of something that has learned to wait. Its neck markings were deep and layered. It had a data slate, and it did not need to tap it nervously because it already knew what was on it. Marcus Vale, it said. That's me, I said. Attaché. That's the title, yes. Tell me about the block incident. I thought about the dust falling from the ceiling, the two stress fractures widening, the specific arithmetic of a crisis that has more variables than the room can hold. What would you like to know? I said. What you did. What needed doing. The interrogator's neck went through two colors, then it went still. You neutralized 4 combatants, it said. There were 6, I said. 2 left on their own once the pressure shifted. Silence. You are correcting my count, it said. I'm thorough, I said. It looked at the slate, at me, at the slate again. Your physiological indicators, it said. During the incident, your cardiac rate decreased. Yes. Under stress it decreased. Yes. Explain. I looked at the table between us, at my hands on it. That's how I work, I said. More color in the neck markings, more stillness after. They ran the physiological suite. I sat through it. The readings came back the same way the scanner had come back in the processing room, with results that were technically accurate and completely outside the reference range. My pain indicators registered, but they registered at a delay and a distance that the equipment was not calibrated for. My pupils did what the lights asked and nothing more. My breathing stayed even. The interrogator watched the outputs with the expression of someone doing math that keeps arriving at impossible answers. You have received combat training, it said. Some, I said. Define some. I thought about all the ways I could answer that question. I thought about the years the answer would take. I thought about all the places the answer would mention, and all the faces the answer would have to leave out because there is no word in any language for what you call people who went into rooms like this one and did not come back out. More than most, I said, less than I needed sometimes. The interrogator leaned forward. Its neck markings went very still. What are you trained to do? It said. I looked at the table. I looked at my hands. Whatever needs doing, I said. It was the most honest answer I had given in years, maybe ever. The interrogator believed me. I could see it in the way the stillness in its markings shifted, not color, just quality. The quality of something recalibrating. That was the problem with the truth sometimes. People believed it, and it scared them more than the lie would have. I sat with that for a moment. Then I waited. They held me for 3 more days after the interrogation. I spent most of it with Osul, who had by this point started a 4th notebook. The Keth gave me considerable space. The guards rotated past my cell with the specific energy of people who have been told something about the occupant and are not sure what to do with the information. The tag on my wrist was still a ½ centimeter loose on the inner edge. I still left it on. Osul asked me, on the 9th night, what I would do when I left. Same thing I've always done, I said. And what is that? I looked at the ceiling, 14 panels, 3 stress fractures. Show up, I said. Figure out what needs doing, do it. Osul wrote for a long time. You make it sound simple, it said. It's not, I said. No, Osul agreed. I imagine it is not. We sat in the quiet for a while. The flat blue-white light did not change. The room still smelled like recycled air and wet stone. Marcus, Osul said. Yeah. They reclassified you today. I already knew. I had seen it in the guard's posture during the evening rotation. The way attention lands on something when someone has told you to pay it. What did they call me? I said. Osul looked at its notes. Unknown, it said, Recommend extreme caution. I thought about the Class 3 support auxiliary tag on my wrist. I thought about the non-combat notation in the intake file. I thought about the word they had put next to my species, primate subtype. Something in my chest moved in a direction that might have been amusement if I let it go that far. I did not let it go that far. Better, I said. Ossel capped the stylus, uncapped it, looked at me. Will they let you go? It said. They don't have a choice, I said. There's a protocol. I'm technically a diplomatic personnel. If they hold me past a certain point, the people on the other side of that line have to make decisions nobody wants to make. And if they decided to hold you anyway? I looked at the tag on my wrist, at the ceiling panels, at the door. Then I would make different decisions, I said. Ossel wrote that down. Then it put the stylus away and did not take it out again. We sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about home, not a specific place. I had stopped having a specific place for it a long time ago. More a feeling. The feeling of a room where the lights were the right color and the air moved naturally and nobody needed anything from you until morning. I thought about it for exactly as long as I allowed myself to think about things like that. Then I put it away and stayed in the room I was in, the way you always have to. The exchange happened on the morning of the 10th day. It was procedural. It is always procedural. There is a line, and on one side are the people giving and on the other side are the people receiving, and everyone watches everyone else's hands and no one says anything that is not absolutely necessary. I walked to the line with 2 Velhari guards and the senior interrogator. The interrogator walked me all the way to the transfer point. Not the guards, the interrogator itself. Attachés do not get that. Cooks do not get that. Class 3 support auxiliaries do not get that. On the other side of the line, I could see the UN liaison team. 4 of them. Suits and earpieces. One of them was already checking something on a tablet, running names against a list. I could see from the slight confusion in his posture that whatever list he was checking did not have me in quite the right category. The interrogator stopped at the line. It looked at me. Its neck markings were cycling slowly, the recalibration color I had come to recognize. You were never a common soldier, it said. I had been waiting for a version of this moment. The moment when someone across a table or across a line decides to say out loud what they have been calculating silently. I was always a soldier, I said. I just stopped needing anyone to know it. The interrogator looked at me for a long beat. Then it stepped back. I crossed the line. The liaison team came forward. The one with the tablet was already talking, debriefing timeline, incident documentation, the standard machinery of paperwork following a person who has been somewhere they were not supposed to be. He handed me a pen. I looked at the stack of forms. 10 days, 2 scanners, 1 non-combat notation, 4 notebooks full of Ossel's handwriting, 6 variables in a crisis that only had one right answer, an interrogator who now slept with different information than it woke up with. I've had worse Tuesdays, I said. I signed the first form. Behind me, on the other side of the line, the interrogator stood very still for a moment. Then it turned and walked back toward the ship with the 2 guards. It requested a council briefing that afternoon. It stood before the assembled senior commanders and presented everything: the scanner failures, the block incident, the physiological outputs, the interrogation transcripts. It presented all of it without editorializing, which was the Velhari way. Then the council asked the question, is he an anomaly? The interrogator thought about every reading, every output, every answer Marcus had given that was completely true and still arrived in the room like something that should not exist. It thought about the jacket, the quietness, the way the cardiac rate went down when everything else went up. It thought about the count, 6 not 4 thorough. No, it said. The council waited. He is a sample, the interrogator said. The room went very quiet. Someone on the council pulled up the human species file, the one with no combat entry, the one that had been blank for so long that the blankness had been mistaken for information. They began filling it in. I finished the forms in a small room off the corridor with a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been made by someone who understood the word coffee only in theory. I drank all of it. I signed everything they put in front of me. When they were done, one of the liaisons, young, careful, the kind of careful that comes from not yet knowing what you do not know, looked at the completed stack and said, "We're glad you're back, sir." I looked at him. "Yeah," I said. I put the pen down. I thought about Osel, about 4 notebooks and a capped stylus and the particular quality of sitting in the dark, beside something that does not need you to be anything other than what you are. I thought about the word they had put next to my species on the intake form. Unknown. Well, not anymore. I stood up, straightened my jacket, walked toward the door. Outside, the light was the right color, and the air moved naturally. I let myself feel that for exactly as long as I allowed. Then I went to find out what needed doing.